One night, I have a waking dream. It begins with an expanding vision and an inner voice that says, as an alchemist seeking gold, I discover that if the gold for all of us is truth, then the understanding lies in the base things, what we sweep under the carpet, everything we deny. The voice continues, since each of us has experienced being a scapegoat, we can see that whatever is repressed keeps us split and creates the unconscious shadow. When we have been labeled, lassoed by lies, and eaten alive by any lion, person, or group, and we really want to get out, it is just a matter of not swallowing any more lies. We just digest and excrete what has been enveloping us. Then we discover we have eaten the whole thing, incorporating the world, the universe. As a loser or a winner, as a failure or a success, as black or white, red, yellow, brown, or any combination thereof. As brilliant or stupid, as Christian or Jewish, Muslim or Buddhist, or any other religion or philosophy. As heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, or transsexual, etc. I am stuck in the alphabet, a captive of symbols, merely a label, until I peek behind the stereotype. While trapped on an emotional roller coaster, while imprisoned within the house of mirrors of the group, people are clearly not seeing each other as people. You can choose to step out of the house of mirrors. By breaking the spell, you can overcome a broken heart. The inner voice goes on. There is a place beyond the labels of mother, lady, whore, nun, lesbian, innocent girl, and bitch. The wheel of woman has an infinite number of spokes. Once a woman begins to peel away the labels and dissolves the public-private split, she is free to accelerate toward the center of her wheel and unfold, becoming a person first. She becomes comfortable with paradox. Her new frame of reference allows her to be a frameless picture. To the extent a woman no longer plays a role to the public world, nor clings to a label or one spoke for her identity, to that extent she is free to no longer deny her other aspects and can see herself and others from the point of view of the hub. This inner voice reminds me, many males are trained from childhood by parents trained from childhood to play a masked role in the public world. To cling to a gender label of man, a person is uncomfortable with paradox. Anytime someone is encountered, be it man, woman, or child, who reflects a fuller spectrum of themselves, the fear of moving through and beyond polarities to personhood, to see more similarities than differences, triggers every conceivable emotion. We have been trained to categorize ourselves and everyone else. The public masks we wear are a reminder to each other that none of us fits rigidly on any one of the spokes of man. Somewhere deep inside, each one of us remembers the childhood freedom of being in touch with and playing at being all the spokes. The inner voice continues, as soon as you recognize that when people are stuck on one spoke, they project onto others all the other spokes of the wheel that they are repressing, you will see and feel yourself comfortable with anyone on any spoke. You will be at home at the hub and welcome everyone to be. The only way to know if life exists off the teeter-totter is to take the risk of stepping off. The people who challenged the false belief that the world was flat found galaxies. Bloody wars are still fought by group after group, like chickens in pecking orders, pecking each other to death. Bombs are created, and each group prepares for the war to vanquish all enemies, without stepping back enough to recognize that the enemy is within the group itself, which is made up of those who have lost sight of anything but a group identity. Therefore, enemies are a case of mistaken identity. While humanity debates the fetus, humankind has the challenge of seeing the already born individual, the person, as a butterfly, emerging from a cocoon called the group. Doesn't this evolution mean that the emerging individual is as valuable as the group that the individual has evolved beyond? Will groups overcome jealousy and envy enough to welcome the individual back from such an inner space journey? Or will these beyond time travelers continue to be appreciated only after they are dead? As a fetus newscaster, observing the debates between groups as to whether or not we should be conceived or aborted, I report a live news update with satellite and laparoscopic hookup. A delegation of fetuses from every country, social strata, religion, color, sex, and developing trimester held a news conference with few belly laughs today. Stating their concerns for human survival to all fully developed humans, one unnamed fetus said to thunderous applause, "Choose whether or not you and the rest of humanity can survive the polarities you force upon each other." Raising her hand, another fetus asked, "How do we get humans to remember that they once spent 9 comfortable months without judgments or a perception of enemies?" She went on to say, "One by one, individuals can do it. With cooperation, in time, perhaps all fully developed humans will." Some fetuses began to kick and shout, "For a pain-free birth and humanity's continued evolution, make the individual's emergence from the group a part of every country's constitution." The voice continues, "As Columbus, I finally recognize that others have gone before me. I discover a native within my being that can conquer my need to dominate. I discover an America and Israel, a Palestine and Atlantis, an all-encompassing territory free of boundaries within. As Ulysses, Pan, Satyricon, and Socrates, I journey the labyrinth, pit, cave, forest, and find my way to the lips of history's bottle, home free. As a sperm that makes it to the egg, I realize that, as human beings, we are all winners. I tell the voice, I fear dying as a group of letters, a picture, a symbol. The voice urges me, conquer fear of death. That's the trunk of the tree. All the other fears are branches. As Dracula, I face the fear of certain words and the censored thoughts of myself and others. I study, sniff, decode, and digest what I fear. I make each word flesh by incorporating it like the bread and wine of life. As Sherlock Holmes, I find out who did it. We all did. As Hitler, I neglect to step back from myself. I do not examine my childhood hurt or my projections or the groups. As Einstein, I move back to the beginning of time, before and beyond. As the child in every human being who has ever lived, I reflect on putting the pieces of life's puzzle together, after having been dissected by the group's labeling great. I try to rediscover and reclaim the experience of spontaneity and timelessness that's out of this world. As Judas, or any black sheep, I now realize that Christ has nothing I do not have. I no longer accept the projection of evil from any group's ever-blurred eyes, be it the vision of slave disciples or master lords. As the glorified, the anointed, and the blessed, I realize that in essence, whatever I have, everyone also has. I learn to share the spotlight and center stage. When I know where I begin and you leave off, I do not have to project onto you aspects of myself that I am denying. If everyone does the same, then hocus pocus, war disappears. I leave the safe womb of the group pyramid for a 40-day, 40-night journey alone in the desert, and discover I am an oasis, not a mirage. The voice, speaking as the alphabet says, as the word born from each alphabet, I am the ultimate. I control civilizations. I define groups with my bullet-piercing letters. No one can hide from my totally hypnotizing attack. All are my slaves. At birth, I define you with a name, and at death, I mark you with an obituary and tombstone. I force books and dates and facts upon you, killing your ability to survive without me. Desperately you seek my favor, special wording to dress you. I choose blindly and indulge in my whims. My combination of letters elevates some to the light and lowers others to the bottomless pit. My armies, the groups themselves, allow no one to have the last word, and when an individual dares to leave the group to enter the forbidden zone of the now, a place beyond words, where my alphabet becomes powerless, the black sheep, traitor enemy, is wiped out, disappears from sight. As there is nothing beyond my word to the group, I survive. To find a passport to freedom and leave my influence, see through all my combinations. The voice, speaking as the alphabet says, if human life perishes due to pride, greed, envy, jealousy, and ignorance, my words will have no one to live through. Yet, in all truth, words are the sirens that you, as Ulysses, must no longer be swept away by. Use the words themselves as inoculations against poison pens. Make these words your surfboards, your life rafts, to carry you over the ocean of every word spoken or written. The voice continues, one must move beyond thinking to the pre-verbal language of seeing with the heart. To become free, one must unlearn the belief that without words, there is no knowing. One can remember how to see all life with unconditioned eyes, dispelling the negative power of words. Only then will looks that kill, and words that kill, and armies that kill be rendered unnecessary. Once we are no longer locked in or out by words, the perplexing Tower of Babel, with imprisoning word walls and binding word ropes, evaporates. To really hear these words and understand them is to free oneself from bondage and evoke the ultimate marriage to the self, becoming pregnant with words and using them lovingly, giving birth to an appreciation of the reverence of all life and all words. Then one can recognize paradox and that one has moved beyond words. The voice encourages us to step back from the hypnotizing effects of all the powers of suggestion that create identities on the family stage means leaving the whole world as you know it and peeling away the labels making up your identity as you have been taught to see it and be it. A step-by-step inner space journal journey traces your return. Like fish, unable to see the water until they flip out. Can we ever be free until we taste stepping out of our mental grates that trap us in prejudgments? For example, the voice says, we have been force-fed a history of symbol soup, chock full of choking labels and artificial ingredients, giving us a taste of humanity that rarely ever approximates the real thing. For example, everyone else's mother and father are seen as persons first. When do we see our own mothers and fathers as persons instead of symbols? What magic happens the moment we do? As arrows held back tightly in the grip of the group, when at last released, we soar. As Adam, I begin at the beginning, learning to penetrate duality. As Eve, I accept my receptivity. I eat the apple to get to the core. From the core, the voice continues, if women and men develop both assertion and receptivity, they move beyond all labels and become whole. If whole is holy, wouldn't God welcome any outcast to come to God's knowledge and embrace? If any leader of a group banishes and labels anyone because of human jealousy and envy, why project that merely human interpretation onto God? Isn't creation itself God bigger than those family and group leaders who fear recognizing equality? All traditional education and art forms can squeeze, stultify, even kill the life energy if we glorify the form and lose touch with the essence, which to the joker is the individual and all the space which surrounds the tightrope as well. As a joker and each and every kind of messenger, both known and unknown, I get all the combinations of the deck imposed on me, hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds. I dissolve, kill all the symbols in life's role-playing card game as symbols, including my own identity made up of labels, a seeming death, a seeming suicide, so that with vibrant clarity I may see myself and others as we really are, out of the trance, reborn as potentiality. As George Washington, I aim to tell the whole truth and nothing but. As gradual and painful as the healing process is, when I penetrate through the illusions I create for myself, there is no lie. My life is an open book. As both sides of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, as Tweety Bird and the Putty Cat, as the three little pigs and the wolf, as Hansel, Gretel, and the Wicked Witch, as Cinderella and the two wicked stepsisters, as Little Red Riding Hood, Grandma, the Woodsman, and the Wolf, as Tarzan and Jane, as Batman, Robin, Catwoman, the good and evil Joker. I have an identity crisis. I learn to reclaim and accept all of me. As a young Native American boy, in past history, in many tribes, I am selected at random, labeled a berdache. I am forced for the rest of my life to dress as a female and sexually serve the braves, both individually and in groups. I have a secure and often revered place in the tribal mythology and special ceremonial roles. I also play an important economic role for my family. As a berdache, I have no means of escape except suicide, or learning the healing art of observing. With the intensity of my experiences and the Indian view that everything that exists is a reflection of the spiritual, everything becomes holy. And I am propelled through and beyond time and space, occasionally entering the awesome shamanistic realm of creation itself. I observe everyone and sense that no matter what position and whatever culture a person is from, we are all in some manner imposed upon. I learned that groups require each one of us to be emotional instruments played against our will by others. I learned that a real education, the art of playing one's own instrument, brings insight. Such insight is an alternative to much human misery and suffering that is rarely ever taught. I understand the prostitute who is sometimes sought after, sometimes reviled. I also understand the talented geisha who is admired. And I understand the sexually abused who are thrust without choice into complex dimensions, abandoned and forced to find a way home. I have tasted each extreme. As a child, seeking to grow and be free, I learned that some young people in most every culture throughout history are molded like jello. Instead of being encouraged to flourish from within, they are forced to form and conform to the appetites of others who have themselves been molded. With a backbone not made of jello, with a desire to be clear and not right, we'll see each child, woman, and fellow in a pure, undistorted light. As a terrifying hurricane, a raging tempest, a storm to devour all storms, I say to my victims, my impact does not compare to your remembering back to the first childhood times when you were randomly chosen by a mother, father, or anyone else to be the recipient of hurtful human emotional storms. While siblings or others who are victims of another kind with an equally blurred partial view, would only see and experience the sunshine. Each time an unexpected flash flood of agonizing trauma shattered your very being, you became more convinced that you deserved the storm. Soon you wait impatiently for the storm to arrive. Finally, you seek the storm out, forgetting that you are attempting to remember the excruciating storm's very inception. As memories flicker, you either fight to see the light or succumb to the stormy voices that shush you, saying, "Forget the memories. They're all water under the bridge." As a tranquilizer and other forms of medication to alter emotional perception and memory, I say, my impact upon you does not compare to the dis-ease of forgetfulness encouraged by a history of cultures welcoming zombie-like states. Remember also means revive. 1, to bring back to life again after a real or apparent death. Restore to consciousness. 2, to give new vigor, health, etc. 3, to bring back into use or currency. 4, to make effective or operative again. 5, to renew in the mind or memory. Refresh, reawaken. 6, to reproduce again as an old play. A voice speaks more clearly than all the other voices to calm panic and human suffering. You asked for the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? One has to be careful what one asks for, because wishes can come true. Now I say to the world in conflict, don't give up. Dissolve the barriers to truly human communication. You've heard of a midnight of the soul? Well, like a frozen finger, your body has numbed itself from the pain of remembering your earliest hurts. To awaken, you must once again allow yourself to feel the agony and eventual ecstasy of thawing. As the golem, in the Middle Ages, in Middle Europe, I am a vision of hope and wisdom about to be made real. I'm constructed out of mud by those leaders who believe I will come to life and reveal the source of their personal and social conflicts. Labeling the golem, or atom from the Hebrew word for earth, they encircle me and, following ancient Kabbalistic text, chant all the letters of the alphabet in every combination. On my forehead they form the word emeth, truth, and placing their faith in my capacity for revelation, they pray for my awakening. Their chanting does the trick. My eyes open and I respond to their questions directly and honestly. Suddenly, these leaders discover that truth conflicts with acceptable beliefs, and if made available to everyone, might make illumination contagious, which would jeopardize these leaders' favored positions. Reluctant to share their power, they quickly erase the E from my forehead, leaving meth, which means he is dead, to them. As a 20th century golem, who can be any one of us, all the combinations of letters of the alphabet are chanted at me. I am labeled every conceivable negative thing. A few words of unexpected praise clash with all the echoes of venomous labels. Gradually, the melding magic of understanding reveals that each of us is all the combinations of words and symbols, the whole alphabet, and that clarity and tranquility are possible to anyone who ventures through and beyond the confines of compromising, stereotyping, labeling, and words. As an apple, I say, human society is inherently violent. In order for us to coexist peacefully, this violence must be exercised. Early human societies practiced human sacrifice, a group act of violence that temporarily alleviated the pressure of violent energy and cut down on individual random acts of violence in society. The ritualization of the violent scapegoating freed the individual from blame and concentrated power in the hands of elders and shamans, etc. Ritual sacrifice alleviates violent impulses for a short period of time, necessitating repetition. In early days, the teachings of Jesus advocated the end of scapegoating once and for all. This was opposite to the vengeful, punishing God of the Old Testament, where scapegoating and sacrifice were common. The early followers of Jesus observed the anti-scapegoating teachings, but the need to alleviate the pressure created by violent tendencies in human societies began to change the interpretation. Scapegoating is internalized in all too many cultures, countries, and family groups. To see and act on this knowledge brings wisdom and erases the need to create victims, leaving us free to create. Remember, an apple a day. If while doing so we are told, you're strictly for the birds, chances are we're learning how to fly. As the grain of sand in the oyster that irritates and forms the pearl, as the carbon that under intense pressure forms the diamond, let's take our irritations and intense pressures and allow them to help us create a far richer and more necessary treasure, a dazzling art form open to us all, the art of becoming a person first. As we unravel all distortions and recognize each other as a part of the enormous canvas stretching through our short history to infinity. The various colors, shapes, and sizes enhancing each other's particular soul thread and unique spark, letting pride give way so that the Old and New Testaments welcome the Now Testament. Our resurrection, our rebirth becomes a reawakening of the natural child within each of us. By reconnecting with the inner child, we join the other children who enter a world of renewal with forthrightness and a feeling of being liberated from labels. Our nakedness allows us to approach the eye of the needle. We no longer teach others to act roles. By stop acting, we see ourselves and others as persons first, instead of symbols. In essence, we discover process, energy, change. In a flash, we are through the eye of the needle. We have reached the fountain of youth, the pot of golden dreams at the end of the rainbow come true.